Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Nicholas Doyon. I'm Director of Customer Success here at Hortau. And today we'll be joined by Derek Toschi, one of our Irrigation Management Advisor, who will be speaking about irrigation management in pistachios. Without further ado, I will pass the mic along to Derek.
Hi everyone, I'm Derek Toschi, an Irrigation Management Advisor for Hortau. I've been at Hortau for about 3 years. I work primarily in Kern, Tulare, and Fresno County, and I work in a wide range of tree and nut crops. And for today's webinar, I'll be going over a quick overview for those who aren't familiar with Hortau. I'll be discussing our approach to precision irrigation management by anticipating crop stress and measuring soil tension. And then I'll be going into some best management practices for pistachios. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A section. So Hortau has been a precision irrigation management company for 19 years. And our approach to irrigation management is by anticipating crop stress in real time with measuring soil tension. And this information that's updated real time is available on our web app, and we also have a mobile app to access as well. And I'm sure everyone here is familiar with the 3 pillars of agronomy: water, fertilizer, and pest management. And so our approach is not only to optimize the water uptake within a tree, but along with optimizing that water uptake, we're also optimizing nutritional uptake, as well as preventing root diseases and limiting pest pressures by maintaining a healthy tree. So for 19 years, we've used a traditional tensiometer to measure soil tension. And this tensiometer had a range of 0 to 80 kilopascals. And these are great for younger trees and for establishing orchards, as well as seeing really great results in anticipating stress in nut crops. Doing that by anticipating stress, using soil tension to minimize stress and maximize nut yield and nut quality. These tensiometers do have limitations. They require high maintenance in dry soils. So when the soil gets too dry, the soil actually pulls water from the probe, and the probes need to be refilled with water to continue working, which this makes it difficult to use for deficit irrigation and also difficult to use around harvest time. So for the last 2 years, we've introduced a new extended range tensiometer called the 1K sensor. And it measures between 0 and 1,000 kilopascals. And this is offering a year-round transparency for eyeballs into the soil. And once that these top out at 1,000 kPa, they don't require any maintenance. We don't have to refill these probes, and they're really redefining irrigation management in many nut crops, including pistachios, because you have year-round transparency in your irrigation data, no matter if you're deficit irrigating or you're minimizing stress or you're going into post-harvest. Okay, and so this is what the tensiometers look like within the field. The location that they're installed in is determined by looking at representative areas within the field by looking at soil maps, talking with the grower, figuring out the best, most representative area to make irrigation decisions based off of. And we'll typically install 3 probes at different depths. There's a 36-inch probe, which is placed directly beneath the drip emitter. And this is measuring the gravitational water movement within the soil and can be used to measure leaching fractions past 36 inches. And the 12 and 24-inch probes are placed on either side, and these are measuring lateral water expansion, as well as monitoring the more active, shallow feeder roots. Okay, so next we'll go into some basics of soil tension and take a look at some soil tension graphs on our platform. So water uptake does not start at the roots. It actually starts at the leaves in a process called transpiration. So leaves have cells called stomata that open and close depending on plant stress. And when these stomata are open, CO2 is allowed into the tree, which is used for photosynthesis and creating carbohydrates. And in exchange, water vapor is lost through the tree out of the stomata. And this water vapor that's lost is creating a vacuum, which is called transpiration. And that vacuum that starts at the leaf is pulling water all the way down through the stem into the roots and pulling water from the soil by creating this vacuum. And so when we're talking about soil tension, we're measuring directly what this suction force is within the soil and how tightly the soil is holding on to water. So optimizing tree transpiration is going to optimize water uptake. It's also going to optimize nutritional uptake as well, as many nutrients are dissolved within water in the soil, and they're taken up with water through transpiration. So what happens when trees undergo excessive stress? The roots send a signal to the stomata in the leaves to close. And what this is doing is conserving water within the tree. But also what's going on is CO2 is no longer allowed to enter the tree. And this is slowing down all the physiological processes. It's slowing down photosynthesis, carbohydrate production. It's slowing vegetative development, root development. It's compromising nut quality and yield, and also can cause premature leaf fall and fruit fall. And excessive stress can impact multiple years of production in the future. Okay, and so this is a soil tension curve. So if we look at on the left, the beginning of the curve at 0 kPa, this is completely saturated soil. So all the micro and macro pore spaces are filled with water, and there's no oxygen for roots to grow into. So there's plenty of water within the soil, but there's limited oxygen. And as that soil drains, we start entering what we call the comfort zone. And this is the optimal amount of water and oxygen within the soil. And this optimal amount of water and oxygen is going to optimize transpiration, optimize nutritional uptake, and minimize tree stress, and have less downtime for carbohydrate production. And as the soil dries further, there's still plenty of oxygen within the soil, but now water is the limiting factor. So you'll start seeing trees wilt or plants wilt, start undergoing water stress as you get outside of the comfort zone. Okay, and so what does 0 kilopascals look like within the field? So remember, 0 kilopascals is complete saturation. So all of the pore spaces are filled with water. There's no oxygen present. It's very hard for a plant to pull water from saturated soils. And it essentially looks like mud in the field. Okay, and so that comfort zone, that perfect balance of water and oxygen within the soil, is after that water, the excess water is drained out of the soil. And what you're seeing here is you're having a good balance of water and oxygen, and that means improved transpiration rates, improved nutritional uptake, less downtime, and more carbohydrate production. Okay, and so this is what monitoring soil tension in real time looks like on the Hortal platform. So for those who aren't familiar, at the bottom is the timeline, with the far right being the current period in time. And on the left is the soil tension measured in kilopascals. And the higher number you get, the less water is available and the tighter the soil is holding on to water. So within the graph, there's 3 probes installed here. So there's a blue 12-inch tensiometer and a green 24-inch tensiometer. And these are measuring the lateral water expansion and the most shallow roots within a soil. And the red tension line is the tensiometer installed at 36 inches, and this is measuring the gravitational water movement in the soil. So these vertical blue bars represent irrigations, and the exact run times are indicated at the top in hours. And this blue band here is what we call the blue band or the comfort zone. And this is customized depending on the crop to optimize transpiration for the tree and minimize downtime. So this is where water is most available and nutritional uptake is at its highest. Okay, and so when we're talking about optimizing soil tension, we're referring to minimizing downtime for the trees. And so what this means is if we're looking at this tension graph, there's an irrigation here on October 21st that dropped the tension at 12 inches to 0, and 0 is completely saturated. So for a few days after, that soil is draining, and you can see how slowly the tension rises during this time. It's because the tree transpiration, it's not able to pull water from that saturated soil. So once it is drained, the tension increases rapidly, and that's because the trees are transpiring much more optimally. We're maximizing water availability within the soil while we're within this comfort zone. We're maximizing nutritional uptake as well. Okay, and so once that we start exiting that comfort zone above 40 kilopascals, we start seeing those stomata close and prevent CO2 from entering the tree. So we're limiting carbohydrate production, and we're also seeing diminished water availability and diminished plant demand the higher the soil tension get as more stomata start closing. Okay, next we'll go into some best irrigation management practices for pistachios. Okay, going into this year in 2021, after a very dry winter, as a pistachio grower, you're looking to recover soil moisture in fields where necessary. And this is really to support early shoot and root development, as well as supporting early shell expansion. And so as a manager, you're looking to minimize anaerobic soil conditions, so minimizing the amount of saturated soil you have, maintaining water availability within the soil, so making sure that you're within a comfortable range, not too wet and not too dry. And you're supporting these developing leaves that are still acting as sinks. They're still using stored carbohydrates that were built up from the fall, until these leaves are fully expanded and they can start giving back to the tree. This is also a period where you're applying fertilizers, so you're looking to maximize your nutritional uptake and minimizing fertilizer leaching by using short irrigation run times. Okay, so let's take a look at what this looks like. This early portion of the season looks like in some soil tension graphs. So on the left, this would be a high stress pistachio field. And so what you would typically think a high stress field would be, you'd think of dry soils, but remember 0 kilopascals is saturation. And so the longer you're at saturation, there's less root activity, there's less plant available water, and you start seeing water stress and slower vegetative development and slower root development, as well as more likely to leach fertilizers and leach nitrogen within the soil. And on the right is a pistachio field that's stayed within our comfort zone, this 10 to 40 kilopascal comfort zone. And they're doing that by allowing the soil tensions to rise into that comfort zone This is where we're seeing maximum transpiration, maximum water uptake at all three depths within the soil. And you're getting more uniform development in your root and shoot growth by maintaining a good balance of water and oxygen. And so you can see this grower is applying a couple short irrigations to manage the soil tension at 12 and 24 inches for the more active shallow roots. And then once that the soil tension at 36 inches, the deep moisture starts leaving the comfort zone, they'll apply a longer irrigation to reset all of them before applying some short irrigations until that 36-inch tension reaches 40 kilopascals again, and then they'll do another long irrigation. So in the field, that high stress anaerobic soil looks like the soil on the left. It's essentially mud. There's lots of water. All that pore space is filled with water. There's limited oxygen. There's not a good balance of water and oxygen in the soil. And on the right is that perfect balance of water and oxygen where water uptake is at its highest. Okay, and so moving along into the summer management plan. So after the shells have fully expanded in around mid-May, we entered a period called shelled hardening, which lasts until late June. And during this time, pistachio trees are seeing limited growth. The shells have already completely expanded. We're seeing limited new shoot growth as well. And so the trees aren't demanding as much water to build carbohydrates because this is a period of low amount of growth. So this is a period where if you're looking to save water in a tight water year like 2021, you can apply a regulated deficit irrigation approach to save water and regulate stress and aid in the lignification of the shells. Okay, and let's look at what this looks like underground. So on the left is a field where the grower applied the full evapotranspiration required for pistachios in his area. And you can see that he's maintaining his soil tensions within the comfort zone or below. And you're actually seeing a little bit lower root activity at 12 inches because of the amount of time that they're irrigating and how saturated the soil is at 12 inches for long periods of time. And you're seeing lower oxygen within that portion of the root zone. And on the right is that same grower in that same field. The following year, they decided to use a regulated deficit irrigation approach to save water and aid in the lignification of the shells. And what you're seeing here is they pretty much irrigated probably about half as much as they did the previous year. They're doing that by anticipating crop stress using soil tension. And so they're waiting for that 12-inch tension to reach around 60 kilopascals, letting it go above the comfort zone. And each time that they're irrigating, they're applying a long enough irrigation to rehydrate the profile down to 36 inches. So they're applying some regulated stress, but they're not compromising their deep moisture, which is going to be very important for kernel filling in July. Okay, and so going into July with kernel filling, this is the most intensive time of the year for irrigation management in pistachios. There's a high water demand as these kernels are rapidly expanding within the shells. And so as a grower, you're looking to minimize stress by anticipating that water demand in advance and maximizing transpiration rates, maximizing carbohydrate production to aid in a rapid kernel expansion. Okay, and looking at some soil tension graphs during kernel filling, on the left would be a high stress field where this grower actually did a pretty good job of maintaining their soil tension within the comfort zone for the beginning part of July. And you can see that they start losing this red deep moisture, the 36-inch soil tension. And there's a reason for that. There's a different soil type at 36 inches, so it's very hard to move water gravitationally to 36 inches. And you can see around mid-July, they actually ran out of water in their canal. And so they had to wait several days before they were able to irrigate again. And you can see in Kern County, mid-July, it's very hot. So you can see these soil tensions just go up to a few hundred kPa within a matter of just a couple of days. And they were never able to recover that soil moisture at 24 or 36 inches after the fact. And in this field, we saw slower kernel development. And because we saw slower kernel development, there's less uniform kernel development going into shell splitting and harvest. On the right is a grower that was anticipating crop stress by maximizing water uptake within the comfort zone. So they're maintaining their soil tensions within the comfort zone, increasing tree transpiration, providing a good balance of water and oxygen within the soil. You can see the water uptake at 12, 24, and 36 inches is about the same, and it's all quite high. And in these situations, you can see more uniform kernel filling and much more rapid kernel expansion by maintaining good soil tension and deep moisture during kernel filling. Okay, in the field on the left, that high soil tension situation would look like the soil on the left, where it's very noticeably dry, it's lighter, can't squeeze out any water, you can't create a ball. There's just very low amount of available water within that soil. And on the right is that same comfort zone where it's well drained and a good balance of water and oxygen to maximize water uptake. Okay, and so what does maintaining soil tension mean for the kernels themselves? So on the left is that same grower that lost its deep moisture during July. And you're seeing delayed kernel expansion and poor uniformity during shell splitting. And that's because water availability is limited. They weren't able to build as many carbohydrates during this period. They weren't able to minimize stress, as well as the nuts on the right, where you're seeing more rapid kernel expansion in the soil, in the orchard that maintained a good balance of water and oxygen within the comfort zone. Okay, heading into a post-harvest plan, we're seeing, of course, shorter days, lower ET requirements. And the goal here for pistachio growers is to maximize tree uptime for carbohydrate sequestration and carbohydrate storage for next year's crop. And you can do that by anticipating stress and maintaining soil tensions within that comfort zone. And you're still looking to minimize anaerobic soil conditions, minimize the amount of saturated soils you have, and reducing excessive stress from being too dry. All right, and so on the left is a post-harvest situation, a high stress situation where you're going to be seeing premature leaf fall. You're seeing minimal root water uptake, and that's because this grower decided not to completely rehydrate its soil profile. And that's going to lead to a poor carbohydrate storage for next year's crop because we're not able to create that vacuum through transpiration. And on the right is a grower that rehydrated its soil profile down to 36 inches completely by using long irrigations over 72 hours per irrigation. And this is to build carbohydrates for next year's crop. And after the soil is completely rehydrated, you're looking to maintain your soil tension between 10 to 40 kilopascals to maintain a good amount of water and oxygen within the soil until you're finished irrigating for the season. In addition to anticipating crop stress with the use of tensiometers, we also offer within our web app and our mobile app a view of an NDVI layer, which is essentially measuring the amount of photosynthesis in an area. And so on this scale, the more red the images, that's a lower photosynthesis area. And then as you go to yellow, that's going to be more of a neutral photosynthesis situation, and more green is a higher photosynthesis. And here's what it looks like within our app. The high stress field is on the left, and you can see these pen marks represent the Hortau station locations. And so this high stress field, you can see, it's more red along the borders. There's less photosynthesis, there's less production along the borders of the field. And there's also certain parts within the field that you're seeing more tree stress as well. Maybe it's due to soil type, or maybe it's due to any number of factors, irrigation, pipe pressure. And on the right would be a field that's at high productivity and high photosynthesis. Okay, and looking forward to the rest of 2021, because we've had such a dry year, we've already seen early applications of water and higher irrigation demand earlier in the season because we're starting with such dry soils. And the limited water availability this year is going to be critical to maintain a high water use efficiency. And you can be looking to do that by eliminating leaching fractions, reducing the amount of time that you're at 0 kilopascals or complete saturation. You can be using a regulated deficit irrigation approach during periods of low growth like shell hardening. And by optimizing spring and summer management plans, by anticipating crop stress and applying the exact amount of water you need to drop the soil tension, but not create an anaerobic soil. And so really high water use efficiency, this means more crop per drop, and equal applications of water do not mean equal results. So this means preventing like I said, leaching fractions, and maintaining your soil tension in your plant water availability within a comfortable range.
All right. Thanks so much, Derek. That was great, super insightful. I hope that people enjoyed your recommendations on irrigation management and pistachios. So now we're going to move into the question section. We did receive a few questions, so I'm going to go ahead and read them, and you can probably just answer them. So the first question we got, at what point in the fall should I stop irrigating my pistachios?
So the most common practice that I'm seeing is around Halloween would be the time where you would stop irrigating pistachios. And this is because if you continually irrigate pistachios well into December, you're keeping those leaves on the tree for a longer period of time, and the trees won't drop their leaves, and you can see frost damage, which can come up in next year's production. So if you have any more questions about this, you can send me an email. My contact information is on the screen right now.
Perfect. Thank you. We did receive another question here. Can Hortau help me keep track of my water usage?
Yes, so each Hortau station is equipped with a pressure transducer, which can measure the total irrigation hours throughout the season. And if you're willing to send us your application rates, we can build a water report that can show you how much water you use during the season.
Excellent. Perfect. Let's see here. We did receive another question here from Danielle. Are the comfort zone for water in KPA defined based on the type of soil? Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, so actually, because we're measuring with soil tension with tensiometers, this is directly measuring that soil suction force, and it's directly how much of a force that the tree has to create to pull water from the soil. So we don't adjust the comfort zone based off of soil. What you would see is different soils uptake water differently, and the soil tension, the rate that it climbs and the rate that it falls will be different based off of soils. That comfort zone is the same because it's a direct measurement of the force that the tree needs to create to pull water from the soil.
Very good, very good. And we got another question here. Could you give some recommendations for saline or saline sodic soils, managing salts, basically?
Yeah, so
Pistachios.
mini pistachios are planted on the west side of the Central Valley in very saline and saline sodic soils. So it's important to manage these differently than you would a healthier soil. What a lot of my growers are doing is, because what you want to do is you want to maintain the salts within solution. You want to prevent them from precipitating out, and you can do that by adjusting that comfort zone to a lower threshold and kind of tightening it up and not letting your soil tensions get too high. So, and you can do that by maintaining the salts within solution and keeping the soil tensions lower. So what a lot of my growers are doing is instead of that 10 to 40 kilopascal range, they'll change it to 10 to 30.
Good. Perfect. Well, thank you. I think that wraps up all the questions we got today. So yeah, that will be a wrap for today. Thanks everyone for joining us. And if you guys have any more questions or want more information about Hortau in general or pistachios in general, you have Derek and I's contact information on this slide. We're going to leave it up for a few more minutes, and feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to help you. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, everyone.